Now, coming on specifically on the NBFCs, where again you play a very, very large and significant role for the infrastructure sector in the country. Now, RBI is increasingly, again, in terms of regulations, RBI's intervention is increasing. The overall flexibility, which again was kind of an edge which NBFCs had over the banks in terms of structuring, maybe funding some structures, funding some kind of maybe situations where banks' hands were tied, etc. So, how do you see the medium term playing out for NBFCs?
See, I think the Indian financial sector changed radically after 2018, right, post the IL&FS outbreak which happened. And post that, I think, the regulator has been fairly active in trying to manage the systemic risks.
Correct.
And like Shubham, you correctly mentioned that, there are, apart from banks, number of NBFCs, including ours, who become systemically very important and very big.
Yeah.
They pose a fairly large threat with regard to the financial sector by virtue of their size, their scale, etc., which is why the regulator RBI also has gone towards scale-based approach with regard to NBFCs. Now, having said that, I think, the direction has been right, and NBFCs like us have already aligned ourselves with regard to these stringent regulations which has been imposed in banks. And the ultimate objective, I think, is to align the regulations between the banks and the NBFCs. But having said that, you see, the inherent advantage of an NBFC in terms of the flexibility of end use, I think should continue and is still continuing.
Okay.
For example, an NBFC can fund a M&A activity. NBFC can fund equity or equity-like end use. NBFC can fund take out of a PE, which perhaps may not be really bankable end users. So I think that situation of a fairly strict regulatory regime in terms of the structure, the management and the running of the NBFC, coupled with the flexibility of end use, is a good situation for the NBFCs in India.
And this is very much required also, because if we also look at cost of funding for a bank vis-a-vis NBFC,
Absolutely.
like banks have the advantage of CASA deposits, which is very competitive, right? And NBFCs will never get access to that.
Yes, which is where the advantage of an NBFC by way of looking at the structured opportunities, which is the equity like or the mezzanine opportunities, which are not really the bankable end uses, which opportunities with regard to M&As, mergers and acquisitions, etc., provide them with a slight yield pickup,
correct,
which is what broadly balances out in terms of returns and expectations.